Hi, this is Nancy Rolfsma with Quilting with Nancy. Thank you for joining me for part 4 of the Winter Blues quilt. The quilt, most of it is behind me. I am working on it as a quilt as you go with the easy sashings technique. So I've got a little more than half of it done there, and then we're going to take you through the steps of the preparing the rest of it. So doing the quilting on the block, putting the sashings on, putting the rows on, actually putting it on point, which is pretty exciting, all the way to doing the borders. So really beautiful quilt. I'm working on it in the middle of the summer, although it is called Winter Blues, and I've done some different colorways with it. So if you haven't seen the previous videos, there are 3 of them. One taking you through the intro and the colorways and that kind of stuff. The second one taking you through the foundation piecing of the blocks. They are very intricate blocks, so using the add an eighth ruler is how we accomplish doing these very detailed blocks without making them very bulky. And then the third video was finishing the blocks, taking off the paper, and putting the blocks together and maybe flipping seams here and there. So if any of that doesn't sound familiar to you, you might want to go back and check out the other videos. So right now we're going to work on the quilting of the blocks. And I mentioned that this is very nice to do as a quilt. Because it's a quilt as you go, you can do this with all straight lines. So for instance, this block is done with all straight lines. You don't have to be a free motion expert. You don't have to have a big long arm. You're just quilting one block at a time. So with this quilt, the backing I used is kind of a busy, sort of a white and blue kind of one. And I love it for this quilt because it is white and blue, but it is directional. And that probably wasn't my best choice because there'll be sometimes that when the quilt is done, I might have birds going this way and then I might have birds going that way. And that's okay. I figure birds can fly in different directions, okay? I'm good with that. But I'll take you through the steps of putting that together later. So I'm going to show you those other quilts, other blocks when I get there. So this is my backing, and then I've put on it my batting. So I am using a bamboo batting, but I'd recommend either the bamboo or a cotton blend. I would definitely not say polyester, and wool is going to be a little bit fluffy, but I do think it would work. So you've got your options there. This one's a bamboo. I really love this bamboo batting. Now I've already taken my 505 and sprayed it on my backing square. Oh, the backing squares are cut 14 inches, the backing and the batting. And I don't know if you can see this right here. My piece of batting wasn't big enough, so I used the heat press batting, the one that is 1.5 inches. Is that 1.5 inches? Yep, 1.5 inches wide. I buy this like on the 100-yard spool. It's really, really big. So that I can put the battings together. I don't have any wasted battings in this studio anymore. Every little bit gets used by using the heat press batting together tape. And we're going to use the smaller version of this when we do the Quilt As You Go sections, the 3/4 inch. So for this, now I've got my backing already spray sized on so it won't move. Now I'm going to use the 505, and you don't use a lot of it. Just that much done. All right. You don't have to coat it. You don't have to saturate it like I do with sizing. You're just going to spray enough on and then center up your block. All right. So you want to be sure that you have, approximately 3/4 to an inch on the sides going around. So that'll make it a little bit easier. So you got something to hold on to. You got to have something to hold on to when you're quilting it, even with straight lines. The other tool that I'm going to use is the Superior, I don't know, is that backwards? Let's do it from this one. There, the Superior Heavy Duty Thread Stand. So this is what it looks like. So, and if you don't have, like my icon, my FAF icon actually has a thread holder. I don't need this when I'm doing that. But when I'm using my smaller machine, I need to use this so that I can use this. I like using cones. It's more affordable, first of all, but it also means that the thread is going to feed through smoother. All right. So if this is my thread stand, my cone of thread, my little string of thread, I guess, is going to come up into this little connection here and then go into my machine from there, which means it'll come off super smoothly off the big cones. This is the thread that I'm using in the bobbin. This is the Wonderful Deco Bob, and this one's a dark blue. It is such a fine thread. Is it like, let's see, I think it's 100 weight. Yeah, 100 weight, which means super fine, which is really great for a block like this. I don't want to see my bobbin thread so much. So this is what I'm using on the bobbin. And in the top, I'm using a silver version of this thread. This is Floriani's embroidery thread. It's a 40 weight polyester, and I love using embroidery thread when I'm doing quilting. I like it because it's kind of shiny. I, of course, like things that are shiny. And it's really strong and it's color fast. And as long as I use a polyester in the bobbin, I can use a polyester in the top. If I chose to quilt this with a cotton thread, there's so many options. I would do a cotton on the top, probably a 40 weight cotton on the top, and a 60 or 70 weight cotton on the bobbin. So cotton and cotton, heavier on the top, lighter on the bobbin. The lighter on the bobbin is going to do a couple of things. One, it's going to mean you can put more on your bobbin. Woohoo! That's always a good thing. Second, I find it gives me a much better tension when I'm doing straight line or free motion quilting. I haven't put the same weight thread in the top and bottom in probably 25 years. The minute I found out by putting a lighter weight in the bobbin, I could get a great tension, I was sold. That's what I did. So I've got my bobbin already wound up with my Wonderful Deco Bond, and I've got a silver version of my Floriani in my machine, and I'm ready to go to the quilting. So I've got it in my machine, and I'm not using my fancy machine. I am using my old Pfaff. It's a, here, let me see if I can show you without wiggling too much. There you go. This is my Pfaff Performance 2056. I'm not sure. I think I've probably had this machine for maybe 12, 15, 20 years, maybe 20. Yeah, so it's not got a deep throat. You see here, it's just got a regular throat on it, so it's not my big icon. So I'm doing this to show you that you can do this on your regular machines, all right? So I've already done some of the quilting, but the first thing you're going to do is stitch all the way around the outside edge just to keep everything in place. Now, I've already done some quilting, as you can see, and the idea here, there, you can see it on the blue, is that I'm doing approximately a 1/16 of an inch away from the seam. So I'm doing that on the silver and on the blue and on the light blue. So every stitch, every seam is stitched that way. The only thing that's not is when it comes to where this section, it's actually made up of two fabrics, right? But I like not stitching this, so then it almost makes this look like one big piece, like over here, one big piece. So whenever that kind of happens, I did not do what I would normally do, you know, the quilting all the way around it. So let's start with here. So I've done this little section, and I'm ready to start doing this silver square. I'm going to start, I am using my open toe applique foot because I have the IDT on the back, which the IDT for a Pfaff means that it's a built-in walking foot. If you don't have a Pfaff or a machine with that, you're going to want to put your walking foot on. Because I have that, I'm able to use the open toe applique foot so I can actually see what I'm doing. I have dialed my stitch down to a 0.5. I want my first stitches to be 4 or 5 very small stitches, and then I'm going to pump it back up to 2.5 and proceed. Nice straight lines. And I'm doing here, I'm a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch from the edge. I've done this edge, but if I come in here that 1/4 inch or so, I'll be able to see that when the quilt has its sashings. So I'm just going to stop right there. Then I'm going to turn. And even with this small machine, because it's only a block, see, I can just crunch my block up into the hole that I have and go on. One more stitch, turn. Get to the point, turn. Now this machine does lift its presser foot for me. So if you don't have that, then obviously you've got to lift your presser foot as you go. So now I'm going to stop there, but I'm not going to cut off the thread. I'm going to go off a little bit, and now I'm just going to whip through to the next section that I want to do, because I'm on the outside piece, so I can do that. I don't have to worry about that. I'm going to do this dark blue one now. So now I'm going to run down the seam. So I'm just one little stitch in, and then start the quilting. There we go. Gonna turn that. Try to not knock the camera as I go. My camera setup is literally a camera on a small tripod pod right in front of my face. So I'm looking past the camera so that I can show you this shot. I hope you appreciate it, because it's not the easiest thing I do. All right, and one more turn. Okay. So that's how I would go about getting all of those larger kind of circled sections done. And when it comes to the triangles here, knowing I've got to have equal density of quilting, I don't want to leave this entire triangle, it's kind of glaring on you, don't want to leave that triangle unquilted. So I'm going to first do the straight line. Again, about a 1/16 of an inch. And the reason I do that 1/16 of an inch is, you think about the seam allowance we have. We had 1/8 inch seam allowances, right? So by quilting a 1/16 of an inch, I'm really securing those seams. So I'm going to go right to there. Then I'm going to turn it. And I want to space these lines evenly. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Turn. Do a straight line, just using the edge of my foot as my guide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Turn again. And do these entire triangles like that. Okay, one more. I'll do one more. I think I did like 3 or 4, 5, 6. And turn. I think I got to do one more to be even with the rest of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There. That'll make it good. All right. Now this time I'm stopping off the edge, so I don't need to do a lock, but I'm going to cut off my threads. I don't have a thread cutter on this machine either. I feel like I'm like going backwards a little bit. I've already done this blue one going around, but I want to do this white one here because I want to show you how I go from the white one, then do some of the other sections, and then come back, so that I don't have as many stops and starts. So I'm first going to take this down to a 0.5, and I want to find my bobbin. So I'm going to bop my foot down and then bring it back up again. And then my needle went down and then back up. Now when I bring it forward and give that a little tuck, oh voila, there is my bobbin thread. I hope you can see that. I can see it. So now I'm going to take some tiny stitches. Now dial up to the 2.5 stitch length that I want to work with. All right. Now I'm going to go straight across here. Wonder if I can bring the camera a little bit closer. All right, how's that? That's a little bit better. There's a little bit of glare, but I can't prevent it. All right. Now I'm on the seam right here. I'm going to turn it and take one stitch into the middle of the quilt, which will put me a 1/16 of an inch from that on the silver piece. Now I'm going to go through and quilt the silver diamond. I think one of the reasons it's glaring is because I use this fabulous silver fabric. And it's got some metallic to it. Then I come back up and come back over. Then I'm going to turn, come back to the white. Whoops, went too far. Going to do a reverse stitch. There. Let's see, am I in position? There. All right. Knowing when your machine is going to go and when it's going to stop is pretty important here. All right. So again, when I get here, I would go into the silver, do the silver triangle and back so that I don't have to do a stop and a start on every single little section. When possible, like when I do these blue sections, I'll go around this blue section, back here, come back and go all the way there. So I'll be able to do this all as one. And then I won't do that little light blue triangle at all. Sometimes I did that. The reason that I could do it is because I didn't need to secure a seam, first of all. In the construction of this one, the seams were pressed to the dark blue and to the dark blue. So stitching down on the dark blue is all that is necessary to make it strong. And then I also like that this then was able to puff up just a little bit more. If you look at the center here with these diamonds here, this little octagon, which I love the two colors, that many of the blocks have that with the two colors in it. And I went around each one of them. And if you think about, when we had to flip a seam here and flip a seam there, that is going to secure all of that seams so that the quilt will last a really, really long time. Now, once the block is completely quilted, I want you to remember that these blocks, before you quilt them, should measure about 12.5 inches. After they are quilted, they will shrink to about 12.25, maybe even a little bit less than that. So when you're trimming your blocks after they're quilted, you're going to trim them to about 12.5 inches. And that might seem odd, but the idea is that it needs to be 12.5 inches with 1/4 inch extra of batting. So let me show you what that looks like. So imagine this one is quilted, okay? When I go to do the trimming on it, putting my ruler down, and it's hard to see, I know, because the glare up there, but I'm going to try to, this block right now is smidge smaller than 12.5 inches. When it comes time to quilt it, I'm going to be able to trim it to 12.5 inches, and it will leave an extra, can you see that? So the block is here, the batting is here. The idea is when you trim it, it needs to be 1/4 inch bigger than the finished block. So the block, after it was quilted, went down to about 12 inches or so. And so then when I trimmed it, I have an extra 1/4 inch. That is so that when we do the easy sashings technique, it's going to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I need to have that extra batting there so that the 1/2 inch seam allowance will be full when I do the easy sashings technique. So you can quilt your quilt blocks. So here's one. On this one, the silver part here, I did not quilt in there, just like with the light blue on the other block, but I did quilt on the light blue, so the silver kind of pops up. Everything else, for the most part, is gone around, trying to do it in the most continuous way possible. Sometimes that means you double over on a stitching line. So on this one, which I think is block 4, there's some much bigger sections here, right? So you have to do a little bit of quilting on the inside of it. So here I think there's a couple of times I went back and forth on this section because I went around the section, then I came and I went around the block here, then I had to be sure I had a line of stitching here, so I think I went back and then forward again. So you can do that. You can go over the lines. Here on the outside section, I've did that kind of echoing stitching so that there was definitely stitching in the section on those outside sections. Keeping in mind it's equal density of quilting. On this block with these long skinny points, I did not do the center section. I did not even do this section. Technically, there is a seam there, but I just thought it looked so cool. And if you see it in real life, it kind of puffs. It's kind of up there. So didn't quilt on these ones, but I also did not quilt on those. And then one last one to show you. This is the number 1 block, and the number 1 block had some pretty large triangle diamond shapes on the outside. So I did an echo stitching about that ½ inch coming in. And I think it's going to be enough. I contemplated doing another one here, which I still could do if I wanted to, but I think it's going to be enough. I really like the look of it. I like that extra accent that gave it by doing that line of quilting on the inside there. So there you have it. You're going to make your blocks and then you're going to quilt them. I'd say the quilting for each block maybe took 45 to an hour to quilt each block. So just consider it kind of, this is my time. Take your time with it. Think about where you're going to put your lines. You don't have to put a line on every seam, but you want to do it on the majority of the seams so that those seams are very, very secure. When we get together next time, my blocks will be all done, and I'll talk to you about doing the easy sashings using a 1-inch sashing. And in this case, I'm even going to put cornerstones in, which is something new. Haven't done that, but maybe one other time with the easy sashings technique. But on this quilt, I think it looks really cool. And just notice here too, I did use the same sashing as I used for the background of the quilt, and it does make the blocks look like they're kind of floating, don't they? So with the background of the block and the sashing being the same, it gives it kind of that look to me. But then when I tried to take the cornerstones out, I didn't like the look. So that's why we put the little cornerstones in there too. So we will tackle that technique next time we get together. I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave comments, thumbs up, all that kind of stuff that all those YouTubers always tell you to do. And have a great day.